Let's talk about ray optics. What basically ray optics is, there are two parts in optics. One is ray, which we'll see in this chapter, and the next is wave optics. When you talk about wave optics, you're basically interested into what light is made up of. How does it interact? When you talk about reflection, refraction, these sorts of things, what basically is happening inside, those things are studied deeply in wave optics. That is a bit conceptual thing. Whereas when you talk about ray optics, you're not dealing with that part. You're simply interested into a ray type or line type structure of light. क्या है अंदर? We're not interested into that. Overall behavior which you see is something we are interested in. For example, when you talk about reflection, light is coming, is getting reflected. That's all. What do you see? Now, what made it into reflection, that will be studied in wave optics. In refraction, you know that light comes and then it bends when it enters into a different medium. It comes, it bends, क्या हो रहा है? We will study that in ray optics. क्यों हो रहा है? What is the reason behind this? That is studied in what? Wave optics. Ray optics is quite easy. अगर आपका geometrical part पर command है, simple geometrical part, if you can draw a neat and clean figure, then you can easily understand this chapter without any difficulty. At the same time आपको पता है कि आप 9-10 में ज्यादातर चीजों को पहले ही देख चुके हो, थोड़ा सा लेवल ऊपर है, बहुत ज्यादा डिफिकल्टी नहीं आएगी. अभी तक हमने जितना भी मैग्नेटिक फील्ड, इलेक्ट्रोस्टैट्स एंड ऑल किया हुआ था, उतना डीप कॉन्सेप्ट्स नहीं है यहां पर. वो सारी डीप चीजें लौटेंगी वेव में. डिफिकल्ट नहीं है, कॉन्सेप्चुअल चीजें वेव में लौटेंगी. अभी के लिए लेट्स स्टार्ट विद रे ऑप्टिक्स. नाउ जब हम बात करते हैं रे ऑप्टिक्स की, देन वी डील विद दीज टू लॉज. जब भी आप रे ऑप्टिक्स के किसी भी आर्टिकल को स्टडी करेंगे, they should satisfy these two things. First is law of rectilinear motion. What does it say? Rectilinear, that is straight line motion. If light is traveling, it follows what? A straight line path, provided there is no change in medium. That is, if medium is throughout homogeneous, then light ray follows what? Straight line path. If medium changes, then refraction takes place, light ray bends. But suppose you talk about light ray moving from air into glass. As long as it is in air, it will follow law of rectilinear motion. At the interface of air and glass, light will bend. Once it enters into glass, again it will follow what? Law of rectilinear motion. Let's just write down this first law, a few points for this law of rectilinear motion. Light ray always moves. Light ray always moves in a straight line path. Light ray always moves in a straight line path if there is no change in the medium. If there is no change in the medium, that is, medium throughout is homogeneous. That is, medium throughout is homogeneous. For example, when light ray enters from air into glass, for example, when light ray enters from air into glass, as long as it is in air, its path is straight line. It bends at the interface. It bends at the interface, and once it enters into glass, again its path is straight line. Now, why it's important to define law of rectilinear motion? We'll understand this when we study wave optics. In wave optics, you will see that light can travel as a wave. When you say as a wave, that means there is no specific path where it is moving. For example, if I say hello, then this hello is not moving in this direction. It is moving everywhere. Now, this movement of waves and all, आपने हल्का फुल्का 11th में देखा हुआ है, बट उसको और भी डीपली आप वेव ऑप्टिक्स में देखेंगे. इन रे ऑप्टिक्स आपको मतलब नहीं लाइट किस तरह से क्या करने वाली है. लॉ ऑफ रेक्टिलिनियर मोशन सिंपली सेज, अगर आपका मीडियम चेंज नहीं हो रहा है, then light will follow what? Straight line path. That's all. Now write down this second law, which is law of reversibility. What is law of reversibility? If you change path of light ray at any point, then change means if you reverse the path, if you reverse the path by 180 degrees like this, then light ray will retrace its original path. Its original path means, suppose you're talking about reflection. We have an incident wave and we have a reflected wave. Suppose you make reflected wave an incident wave. If reflected wave becomes incident wave, then incident wave will become what? Reflected. That's called what? Law of reversibility. At any point on the path, if you reverse the whole thing by 180 degrees, then light ray will simply retrace its original path. Just look here. Look at these two things. Suppose this is the reflecting surface. For this reflecting surface, if you say this is the incident wave, then you know this much, that this is the reflected wave. The law of reversibility says what? If you simply reverse this path from this to this, if you make reflected ray and incident ray, then incident ray will become what? Reflected ray. Or you can see that light ray can retrace its own path. Similarly, if you have air and glass interface, and light enters like this, light is coming like this, you know that when it moves from rarer to denser, it bends like this. Now, this is the incident ray, this is the refracted ray. If somebody reverses the path, if you say that this is the incident ray, then this will become what? Refracted ray. Now, let's understand this thing, this law of reversibility, with a statement which you are already familiar with. You know that this thing is called what? Normal. And what do we say that? When light when light moves from rarer medium into denser, it bends towards the normal. It bends towards the normal. You already know this. At the same time, you know that when light moves from denser medium into rarer, it moves away from the normal. Now, you don't have to draw a separate figure for that. You can understand the whole thing with the help of this figure only. Look at this blue ray, this blue sign. This is the incident ray. This becomes what? Refracted ray. Light is traveling from a denser medium into a rarer medium. And what is happening? It is moving away from the normal. With the help of same figure, using law of reversibility, you can explain both these statements at the same time. Write down this law of reversibility. According to law of reversibility, if light ray if light ray is reversed at any point along its path by 180 degrees, then it will retrace its own path. That is in reflection, if reflected ray is made incident ray, then incident ray becomes a reflected ray. Similarly, in refraction, if refracted ray is made incident ray, then incident ray becomes a refracted ray. जब हम आगे एग्जाम्पल सॉल्व करेंगे, कुछ क्वेश्चंस करेंगे, तब आपको इस लॉ ऑफ रिवर्सिबिलिटी का एडवांटेज और भी अच्छे से क्लियर होगा. एक एडवांटेज तो आपको भी यहाँ पर दिख गया, जो मैंने आपको बताया कि जब आप रेयर से डेंसर आ रहे हो, इट बेंड्स टुवर्ड्स नॉर्मल. यू डोंट हैव टू ड्रॉ अ सेपरेट फिगर. जब आप डेंसर से रेयर जा रहे हो, light is moving away from the normal. You can explain all these things very easily with the help of this law of reversibility. Note down this much. Let's start ray optics with the help of reflection at plane surfaces. Something which is quite elementary, but still we'll see how we can make things difficult. ज़्यादा difficult नहीं बनाएंगे, लेकिन फिर भी इंटरेस्टिंग बनाएंगे चीज़ों को, क्योंकि अदरवाइज तो किस तरह के लॉज हैं यहाँ पर हल्का फुल्का आइडिया आपको लग गया. लॉज ऑफ रे ऑप्टिक्स में, now look at laws of reflection, the very elementary laws. Write down laws of reflection. I said laws of reflection. I didn't say laws of reflection at plane surface. Write down laws of reflection. किसी भी तरह की सरफेस हो, क्या मतलब है इसका, क्लियर हो जाएगा. Don't you worry. We have a reflecting surface which is called mirror. Now, this is the incident ray. The point where incident ray meets the mirror, you draw a normal at that point. That's a normal. And then that's your reflected ray. What is the first law of reflection? If angle of incidence is I and angle of reflection is R, then first law says angle I is equal to angle R. And therefore I said very elementary laws. This is something which you already know, and therefore बहुत ही easy part है ray optics. Write down this first law of reflection. When reflection takes place, when reflection takes place, angle of incidence is always equal to angle of reflection. Angle of incidence is always equal to angle of reflection. This is the first law. But this is not the sufficient law for reflection. Why it's not sufficient, इस चीज को देखना. This first law, it simply says what? Angle I is equal to angle R. Now look at this setup. This is the incident ray, this is your reflected ray, and that's your normal. Everything is fine. This angle is equal to this. But अगर सिचुएशन कुछ इस तरह से बनती, अगर सिचुएशन कुछ इस तरह से डेवलप होती, look at this. I hope you can visualize it. Things are no longer coplanar. They are not in the same plane, but they still maintain this relation. The angle between this black and blue is same as this black and blue. But this is not allowed as far as reflection is concerned. And therefore, we need to add something. What is that? When you talk about reflection, angle I should be equal to angle R. लेकिन सिचुएशन इस तरह की नहीं होनी चाहिए. Situation इस तरह की नहीं होनी चाहिए. Things should be what? Coplanar. Write down this second law. When reflection takes place, incident ray, normal, and reflected ray, incident ray, normal, and reflected ray, all three should be coplanar. All three should be coplanar. That is, they all lie in the same plane. That is, they all lie in the same plane. Now, there is no need for third, but you can introduce this third part also. You can create a situation which allows first law and second, but still things are not correct. Look here. That's a normal. This is the reflected ray. This is the incident ray. Angles are same. Things are coplanar. But that's not how reflection takes place. And therefore you say that incident ray, normal, and reflected ray, they all meet at a point on the surface of mirror. Write down this third law. When reflection takes place, when reflection takes place, incident ray, normal, and reflected ray, they all should meet at one point on the surface of mirror. At one point on the surface of mirror. Now hopefully ये लॉज क्लियर हो गए होंगे, कोई खतरनाक लॉज नहीं है. जिस तरह के खतरनाक लॉज इलेक्ट्रोस्टैट्स में आया करते थे, मैग्नेटिक फील्ड में आया करते थे, वैसी चीजें यहां नहीं हैं. Now, when I said that these laws are valid for any type of reflection, not necessarily a plane surface, you can also have a curved surface. Why do I say that? Suppose you have a curved surface like this. If somebody has a curved surface like this, which is a concave surface, and light arrives at some point on this curved surface, then you know that if you take that portion where this reflection is going to take place, that small portion, let's remove this extra part, then you can see that this portion is nothing but a plane surface. And therefore, whatever laws we discussed, they are valid for a flat, a plane surface, as well as for a curved surface. You will have an incident ray, you will draw a normal at that point. This angle should be equal to this angle, because this curved surface, if you consider that portion where reflection is going to take place, that portion is so small that it can be considered as a plane surface. Put down this, and then we'll see how we can use this set of laws for examples which we are going to deal with. Note down this. Now let's see some examples on reflection and plane surfaces. किस तरह से questions आप expect कर सकते हो? We have a mirror. This is the incident ray, and we have been told that for the incident ray, unit vector. I told you that we will try to introduce some difficulty. Difficulty केवल लोगों के दिमाग में है. Once they see vectors, उनको लगता है कि पता नहीं क्या खतरनाक चीज आने वाली है. Let's see आपको खतरनाक लगता है या नहीं. So this ray, हमने बोला कि that this incident ray is defined with the help of a unit vector, which is I cap minus 3 j cap divided by root 10. Now, what is a unit vector? A unit vector, it gives you what direction? It gives you direction. Its magnitude is what? 1. You can see that magnitude is 1. What is the magnitude of the numerator? Root over 1 plus 9. Divide that, you got what? A unit vector. how do you get a unit vector? You divide a vector with its magnitude. This unit vector is the incident ray. The question is that for this mirror, find out unit vector for the reflected ray. Write down the question. In the given figure, find out unit vector for the reflected ray. Now at this stage, pause the video, try to answer this question and see yourself whether things are easy or difficult. Now, अपने से बोला गया है कि भाई यूनिट वेक्टर इंसिडेंट रे का दिया हुआ है, रिफ्लेक्टेड रे का फाइंड करो. बोला ठीक, दैट्स नॉर्मल. This angle is what? Theta. Reflected ray is this. We know that this angle is also what? Theta. अब अगर ये वेक्टर है तो इस वेक्टर के पास क्या है? इस वेक्टर के पास there are two components, a horizontal component and a vertical component. Horizontal component and vertical component. What is this horizontal component? This horizontal component is 1 upon root 10. Coefficient of I cap is what? 1 upon root 10. What is this direction? Minus of j cap. And what is this component? 3 upon root 10. ये वेक्टर्स आप 11 से करते आ रहे हो, 12th में भी बहुत किया हुआ है. Incident ray, it has two components, horizontal and vertical. अब आपको पता है कि जब ये रिफ्लेक्ट होगी, रिफ्लेक्ट होने पर इसका लुक ये आएगा. This is theta. First law of reflection says this theta and this theta, they are what? Same. Which means what? ये जो reflected ray है, it also has these two components. What is this component? This component is still 1 upon root 10. 1 upon root 10. And if you want to have this angle as what? Theta. This is theta. This is theta. Look at this vertical component. Vertical component with incident ray, it makes an angle of theta. Therefore, this vertical component, which makes angle theta with the reflected ray, should also be 3 by root 10. समझाने के लिए इतना टाइम लिया, वरना ये जो रे आपको दिख रही है, इस रिफ्लेक्टेड रे के लिए यूनिट वेक्टर, you could write that in just one line. What is that? 1 by root 10 1 by root 10, and the only change is what? This minus becomes what? Plus 3 j cap divided by root 10. That's the answer. होपफुली समझ में आ गया होगा किस तरह से हमने इस क्वेश्चन को हैंडल किया हुआ है. अब ये कितना इजी है, आगे से इट्स गुड कि अगर आप पूरी कहानी ड्रॉ करें, बट मेरे हिसाब से इस क्वेश्चन को आप इजीली हैंडल कर सकते हैं. सपोज वी हैव बीन गिवन सेम क्वेश्चन, बट मिरर इज प्लेस्ड लाइक दिस. Incident ray is still same. Incident ray is still same and is given by I minus 3j upon root 10. I cap minus 3j cap upon root 10. This is the unit vector for incident ray. Question आया, for this orientation of mirror, find out unit vector for the reflected ray. You can pause the video. हालांकि क्वेश्चन का आंसर इतना इजी है कि सबकी जरूरत भी नहीं पड़नी चाहिए. You can straight away answer this. ये है आपका नॉर्मल. Light will be reflected like this. If it is reflected like this, then you can see that जो हमारा I cap component है उसका डायरेक्शन क्या हुआ है, चेंज. जो हॉरिजॉन्टल कंपोनेंट है उसका डायरेक्शन क्या हुआ है, चेंज. वर्टिकल कंपोनेंट इज स्टिल व्हाट, सेम. And therefore equation of this reflected wave is what, I becomes what, minus I. Downward direction is same, this as well as this, minus of 3j cap divided by root 10. That's the answer. Hopefully किस तरह से इस क्वेश्चन को आप हैंडल कर सकते हैं ये चीज क्लियर हो गई होगी. नाउ ये हुआ इजी स्कूल लेवल, नीट लेवल टाइप का पार्ट, बोर्ड एग्जामिनेशन टाइप का पार्ट. अगर आपसे बात की जाए जेई मेंस एंड ऑल में किस तरह से डिफिकल्टी लेवल बढ़ा सकते हैं, टेक दिस क्वेश्चन एज होमवर्क. अटेंड करना, नहीं हो पाए तो पूछना. इन्होंने बोला कि जो मिरर है अपना, दैट मिरर इज नॉट हॉरिजॉन्टल एनीमोर. This mirror, let's say, makes an angle of 60 degrees with the horizontal. That's the mirror. And for this mirror, incident ray is same. I cap minus 3j cap upon root 10. I cap minus 3j cap upon root 10. That's your mirror. And it makes an angle of 60 degrees with the horizontal. For this setup, you need to find unit vector for the reflected ray. ये हो गया आपके लिए जेई मेंस पर. डिफिकल्ट नहीं है, वेक्टर्स का आइडिया लो, चीजें बन जाएंगी. क्या अपने दिमाग में रखना, you need to be careful regarding what. Look at, if you say this is mirror and light is coming like this, look at this, light is coming like this, then it will be reflected in this manner. But ये जो फिगर मैंने ड्रॉ किया हुआ है, this is drawn roughly. तो सिचुएशन क्या हो सकती है कि जो लाइट आ रही है, it can also be like this. Light is coming like this. I don't know what is this angle, I minus 3j upon root 10. What is this direction? We have no idea. जब तक कि आप मैथमेटिकली उसको डेवलप ना करें. तो 60 degree something like this, and light अगर इस तरह से आ रही है, then reflected ray will move like this. That increases what? Difficulty level. जो अपन ने बोला था कि अपन इजी चीजों के अंदर क्या डेवलप कर सकते हैं, डिफिकल्टी. स्कूल लेवल, नीट लेवल चीजें डिफिकल्ट नहीं है. This part and this part, they're quite easy. We can understand these things. जेई लेवल पर जब आप पहुंचेंगे, थोड़ा सा आपको सोचना होगा. क्या सोचना होगा, उसका एक आइडिया मैंने आपको यहां पर दे दिया है. करना नहीं होगा, मैं आपकी हेल्प करूंगा. नोट डाउन दिस मच. Let's see another example. We have two mirrors, and these mirrors are making an angle of 30 degrees with each other. This angle is 30. This is first mirror, let's call it M1. Second mirror, let's call it M2. Now, there is an incident ray. A ray, it falls on this first mirror M1. This angle is theta. The question is, this question has two parts. First part will solve in this lecture. Second will be homework for you. This is the incident ray. Write down the question. Find out theta. Find out theta so that after reflection from the second mirror, light ray becomes number one, horizontal, number two, vertical. After reflection from second mirror, light ray becomes what? Horizontal. This is the first part. It becomes vertical. That's the second part. For what value of theta, case 1 will be possible. For what value of theta, case 2 will be possible. This is something which you need to find out. Now, we'll discuss part 1. Part 1 in this lecture. Second part is as homework. Try करना. Problem हो तो पूछना मुझसे. अभी इस first part के लिए pause the video. Try to find this theta. Draw some ray diagram. देखिए आपसे कितना हो पाता है. और अगर नहीं हो पाए then come back and see the solution. Now, अपने को find करना है theta so that after reflection from the second mirror, light ray becomes what? Horizontal. तो हमने क्या किया? हमने एक rough path draw किया. Light इस तरफ आई, light इस तरफ गई, and then it goes like this. It becomes what? Horizontal. तो प्रॉब्लम ये है कि इस पूरे सेटअप को जब आप डेवलप करने की कोशिश करोगे तो आप कहां से कहां जा रहे हो देखना. You're moving from unknown end. Unknown end means we have no idea of theta. From unknown end to known end. This is the position, this is the point where we have the information that light ray is going to move like this. चाहे कुछ हो जाए. यहां पर हमें नहीं पता. हो सकता है लाइट ऐसे आ रही हो सकता है इधर आ रही हो सकता है इधर आ रही हो सकता है इधर आ रही हो. लेकिन यहां पक्का है that light is moving like this. It becomes horizontal. If this is the known end and this is the unknown end, तो हमने जो रे ऑप्टिक्स के लिए लॉज डिफाइन किए थे उसमें से एक लॉ का फायदा उठाने वाले हैं. लॉस फॉर रिफ्लेक्शन नहीं, लॉस फॉर रे ऑप्टिक्स की जो हमने बात की थी उसका फायदा उठाने वाले हैं. किस चीज का फायदा उठाने वाले हैं? Law of reversibility. Instead of moving from unknown end to known end, it's better if you move from known end to what? Unknown. In what way? In this form. अपने से बोला गया law of reversibility. किसी भी एक पॉइंट पर लाइट रे इसका डायरेक्शन क्या कर दो? रिवर्स. 180 डिग्री से डायरेक्शन चेंज. Then light ray will retrace its own path. It will move like this and then it will move like this. This will start from this, which is the known end. We will go for this and then end में हम क्या करेंगे? हम इस ब्लू वाले पार्ट से बात करेंगे. किस तरह से होगा देखना यहां पर. Let's draw these mirrors again. These are the mirrors. जो लाइट है वो इस तरह से आ रही है. That's the incident ray using law of reversibility. अगर ये इंसिडेंट रे है, इंसिडेंट रे फॉर मिरर 2, तो अगर आपको इंसिडेंट रे बताए तो सबसे पहला काम अब क्या होगा, यू विल ड्रॉ नॉर्मल. तो हमने यहां पर एक नॉर्मल ड्रॉ किया. दैट्स अ नॉर्मल. दैट्स कॉल इट N2 फॉर मिरर 2. एंगल्स का आइडिया है अपने को. दिस इज व्हाट 30. दिस इज 30. If this angle is 30, this is also 30. And that's your normal. अगर ये normal है तो आपको इस angle का idea है that this angle is what 60 degrees. अब हमने यहां पर अपने समझने के लिए just एक vertical line draw की, just for the reference. किस तरह का reference है अभी clear हो जाएगा. That's a vertical line. If this is 60, this is the horizontal, then you know that this much is 30 degrees. क्यों इस चीज को हमने ड्रॉ किया हुआ है, क्यों हमने इस चीज को ड्रॉ किया हुआ है, ये अब क्लियर होगा. What is this incident ray? What is this normal? Where is the reflected ray? तो आदमी इसको ऐसा भी ड्रॉ कर सकता था, आदमी उसको ऐसा भी ड्रॉ कर सकता था, लेकिन ड्रॉ किस तरह से करना चाहिए था, लाइक दिस. ऐसा क्यों? व्हाट इज द एंगल बिटवीन इंसिडेंट रे एंड नॉर्मल? 60. लेकिन यहां तक एंगल कितना है? 30. एंड देयरफॉर दिस रे शुड मूव लाइक दिस. If it moves like this, this is 30, but angle between normal and incident ray is 60, and therefore angle between normal and reflected ray should also be 60. How can you make it possible? If you say that this angle is also what? 30. If you say this is 30, then what happens? This is 60. This whole thing is also what? 60. अगर ये 60 है, तो अब हम आगे क्या करने वाले हैं, यहां देखना. We already know that this angle is what? 30 from this figure. Now, this is the incident ray for mirror M1. This is the reflected ray for mirror M2. But it becomes what? Incident ray for mirror M1. अगर इंसिडेंट रे है मिरर पर, तो नेक्स्ट चीज क्या करते हैं आप? यू गो एंड डिफाइन नॉर्मल. तो हमने यहां पर नॉर्मल डिफाइन किया. दैट्स अ नॉर्मल. लेट्स कॉल इट N1. अगर नॉर्मल पता है तो फिर अगला काम क्या करते हैं? नॉर्मल के साथ इंसिडेंट रे का एंगल. Find out this angle. Now what is this angle? You know. This is what? 30. This is also 30. Alternate angles. इस एंगल का आपको आइडिया लग चुका है. What is this angle? 30. If this is 30, then what? This ray gets reflected like this. This ray is reflected in this direction. That's the reflected ray. This angle is 30, and therefore this is also what? 30. 30. Angle of reflection, angle of incidence is equal to angle of reflection. अब आते हैं अपने क्वेश्चन पर. अभी हमने क्या किया हुआ है? लॉ ऑफ रिवर्सिबिलिटी को यूज. लॉ ऑफ रिवर्सिबिलिटी मीन्स हमने किस चीज को ड्रॉ किया हुआ था? इस ब्लैक एरो पाथ को. लेकिन करना क्या था? क्वेश्चन क्या बोलता है? Question ये नहीं बोलता that light ray is incident on M2. Question says that light ray is incident on M1, which means now look here. If light moves like this, if light moves like this, then it will be reflected in this way, and finally it will be reflected in this way. If light ray arrives on mirror M1 in this direction, it will be reflected like this, and then finally M2 is going to reflect it in this direction. Now इतना करने के बाद भी, यहां पहुंचने के बाद भी अभी भी आदमी इस थीटा को फाइंड करने में गड़बड़ करता है. तो आप चाहें तो इतना पार्ट ड्रॉ करने के बाद वीडियो पॉज करके सोचना कि क्या निकालना है अपने को थीटा, व्हाट्स द वैल्यू ऑफ थीटा. लोग क्या गड़बड़ करते हैं अपन देखेंगे उस चीज को. Now we need this theta. What is theta? Light is coming like this, and we need its angle from this side of mirror. Look here, that's your mirror, and light is coming like this. We need to find this angle. लेकिन हमारे केस में लाइट इस तरह से आ रही है, and therefore we need to find this much angle. Again, question says find out theta, but then we found that theta is not acute. Theta is this. It's an obtuse angle, which means जिस theta की अपने को तलाश है, that theta is basically this much. This whole thing in black is your theta. अब ये कितना है हर आदमी को पता है. What is this theta? This much is what? 90. कहां से कहां तक 90? This and this, and then this much extra. What is the extra portion? 30. And therefore your answer is 90 plus 30, which is coming 120. सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट चीज, अगर आपने लॉ ऑफ रिवर्सिबिलिटी का एडवांटेज नहीं लिया होता तो आप क्या करते रहते, आप कोशिश करते रहते लाइट इधर से आ रही है, एंड देन यू विल ट्राई टू ड्रॉ दिस. लेकिन रियल सिचुएशन क्या है? लाइट इज नॉट अराइविंग एट मिरर M1 in this form. Instead it arrives like this. The angle of 120, and then what happens? It gets reflected in this direction, and then it moves like this, becomes what? Horizontal. Hopefully समझ में आ गया होगा. चीजें इजी भी हैं. क्या एडवांटेज था उन सारे लॉज एंड ऑल को डिफाइन करने का? होपफुली वो चीज क्लियर हो गई होगी. इसी इंफॉर्मेशन का यूज करना फॉर द सेकेंड होमवर्क, चीजों को डेवलप करना. Put down this. Let's talk about angle of deviation. What is the angle of deviation? We have a mirror. Light ray falls on the mirror and is reflected in this direction. Incident ray, reflected ray, and that's your normal. This angle, if is theta, then this angle is also what? Theta. We need to find angle of deviation. But first, what is angle of deviation? Angle of deviation means if you remove this mirror, then what will happen? If you remove this mirror, then this light ray is going to follow this path. This is the path of incident ray. Path of incident ray. But when you place a mirror on its path, it deviates from its original path. And our aim is to find this much angle, which is called angle of deviation. Angle of deviation delta. Now how do you find this? मेरे ख्याल में इससे easy question पूरी physics में नहीं मिलेगा. Let's find out angle of deviation in terms of theta. What is this? If there is no mirror, then first law of ray optics, rectilinear path. If there is no mirror, then this path is rectilinear, straight line, that is 180. The whole thing is 180. You're saying that angle of deviation plus theta is what? 180. That gives you angle of deviation as 180 minus 2 theta. Done. इतना करना है. चीजें डिफिकल्ट नहीं है. रे ऑप्टिक्स इतनी ही इजी है. मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम इतनी ही इजी है. व्हाट इज एंगल ऑफ डेविएशन? 180 माइनस 2 थीटा. अब लोग आपको किस तरह से कंफ्यूज करने की कोशिश कर सकते हैं उसको देखना. क्वेश्चन इस तरह से दिया उन्होंने दैट वी हैव अ मिरर, लाइट आ रही है at the incident ray, and they gave you that theta is 30. Find out angle of deviation. आदमी क्या करता है? आदमी इस फॉर्मेट को याद रखता है 180 minus 2 theta and then they straight away go for कि सर ने सिखाया था एंगल ऑफ डेविएशन क्या होगा? 180 minus 2 theta. अच्छा, इस केस में क्या बना हुआ है? 180 minus 2 into 30. 180 minus 60. They say that answer is 120. I hope you can see that this answer is wrong. Why wrong? When you write 180 minus 2 theta, what is theta? Angle of incidence. This theta is not the angle of incidence. What is the angle of incidence? If this is theta, then this angle is what? 60 degrees. And therefore, correct answer will be 180 minus 2 multiplied by, do not remember theta, remember what? Angle of incidence. What is the angle of incidence? 60. 180 minus 120, answer is coming what? 60 degrees, which is the correct answer. चीजें इजी हैं, तो फिर उसके अंदर किस तरह से हल्का फुल्का डिफिकल्टी लेवल बढ़ाएं, लोग इस तरह की चीजें करते हैं. You need to be careful. Just write down what theta is. Write down with this theta. Theta is always angle of incidence. Theta is always angle of incidence. That is angle between incident ray and normal. That is angle between incident ray and normal. Now, किस तरह से इस एंगल ऑफ डेविएशन पार्ट को इस फॉर्मूले और को हम यूज करेंगे अपनी कैलकुलेशंस में, उसको देखना. सपोज we have been given 3 mirrors and they have been arranged like this. These are three mirrors, first, second, third, and that's the incident ray. This is the incident ray. Incident ray makes an angle of 30 degrees. Incident ray makes an angle of 30 degrees with the first mirror. First mirror, second mirror, third mirror. Now write down the question. Write down the question. Find out total angle of deviation. Find out total angle of deviation when light ray finally reflects from the third mirror. From the third mirror. इस स्टेज पर वीडियो पॉज करना, पॉज करने के बाद try to find delta and then see what is the correct approach. अपने को टोटल एंगल ऑफ डेविएशन फाइंड करना है. इस टोटल एंगल ऑफ डेविएशन के लिए अगर आप इसका पाथ ड्रॉ करते तो इसका पाथ किस तरह का बनता उसको देखना. तो ये लाइट यहां आएगी, you will draw a normal. अगर इंसिडेंट रे पता है then you will go for the normal. That's how it reflects. जैसे ये रिफ्लेक्ट होगी, यहां पर आपने क्या किया, नॉर्मल ड्रॉ किया for the second mirror. Again ये रिफ्लेक्ट होगी, you will draw third normal. And then finally it leaves this box, this mirror box. That's the final emergent ray, incident ray, and finally it comes out like this. The question says find out delta total of this from this. Now बहुत सारे लोग इस फिगर को ड्रॉ कर लेते हैं, इनफैक्ट हर आदमी, बट वंस दे गो फॉर डेल्टा उनको समझ में नहीं आता कि क्या पूछा गया था, क्या चीज निकालनी थी. ज्यादातर लोग दे गो एंड फाइंड दिस थीटा. उनको क्या लगता है, दिस इज द इंसिडेंट, दिस इज द इमर्जेंट फाइनल रे व्हिच कम्स आउट. This is the angle of deviation, but this is not the angle of deviation. क्यों नहीं है देखना है यहां पर. This is the incident ray first. Now look here. This is the first ray, and then it deviates. Look at the way deviation takes place. This. Then at the second reflection again it deviates. Then a third reflection, it again deviates. What is happening? This is something which is delta. Look again. Initial path, then first time, then second time, then third time. What is the angle of deviation? What is the angle of deviation? Angle of deviation is this much. This whole thing. This whole thing. You need to find this angle of deviation. अगर नहीं हुआ था, कोई आइडिया नहीं था, you can again pause the video and go for delta. अपन इसको कैलकुलेट करते हैं क्या चीज है. Now question में दिया हुआ है that this is 30, this is 30, everybody can see that this is 60. If this is 60, then this is also 60. Incident ray, reflected ray. If this is 60, normal, this angle is 30. If this is 30, then this angle is also what? 30. If this is 30, then this angle is 60. Therefore, this angle is also what? 60. Now look here. If I draw a horizontal line at this place, if I draw a horizontal line at this place, this is 60. I hope you can see that this is also 60. This much is what? 60. Again, this is 60, and this line and this line, they are parallel, and therefore this much angle, this much is what? 60. Which means what is the inner angle? This inner angle, 60 plus 60, 120. But we are interested in what? This whole thing is what? 360, and therefore your delta is coming 360 minus 60, 60, 120, and the answer is 240 degrees. That's the answer. Now, write down this. That's the first method. In the second method, I want you to use directly the formula. Formula क्या था अपना? 180 minus 2 multiplied by angle of incidence. 180 minus 2 into angle of incidence. अगर आपने इस तरह से करने की कोशिश की थी, and go for the second method. नहीं हो पाए, come back and see the solution. इस सेकेंड मेथड में हमने क्या किया? हमने बोला फॉर फर्स्ट मिरर लेट्स फाइंड आउट डेल्टा 1. व्हाट इज डेल्टा 1? 180 minus 2 multiplied by angle of incidence. What is angle of incidence? It's not 30. Angle of incidence is what? 60 for the first mirror. 2 into 60. This gives us 180 minus 120, 60 degrees. For the second mirror, delta 2 is 180 minus 2 into angle of incidence. What is the angle of incidence? 30 degrees. 2 into 30. This is coming 180 minus 60, 120. For third mirror, delta 3 is 180 minus 2 into angle of incidence, which is what? 60. That gives us 180 minus 120, 60 degrees. And finally, total deviation is delta 1 plus delta 2 plus delta 3. 60 plus 120 plus 60. What is the answer? 240 degrees. Same. Hopefully समझ में आ गया होगा फर्स्ट मेथड एंड सेकेंड मेथड. अब इसी क्वेश्चन में आपके लिए ये होमवर्क है, इसको भी अटेंड करना. Same setup, but there is a little change. This third mirror, इसको हमने यहां से रिमूव किया and it's placed like this. your incident ray is still same. That's your incident ray. It makes an angle of 30 degrees. This angle is what? Same, 30. M1, M2, and that's your M3. Now you need to find again what? Total angle of deviation after it reflects from third mirror. That's the homework part. Attempt करना है इस चीज को. दोनों मेथड सेम. फर्स्ट मेथड जिस तरह से हमने यहाँ बनाया, सेकंड मेथड डेल्टास को ऐड करते हुए अटेम्प्ट करना. नहीं हो पाए पूछना मुझसे. नोट डाउन एवरीथिंग.